This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
Our underground network is standing by at the drop zone to distribute.
The transmission is being jammed. Looks like the Empire came out to welcome us.
Attention, Rebel Convoy. This system is under Imperial control. Stand down or be destroyed.
What a surprise. Star Wars Sabers and Scoundrels.
Starships.
Carabast.
Yeah.
Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels. A Scoundrels Special Edition.
Greetings, Scoundrels. Welcome to this Scoundrel Special Edition. On this week's show, Darth Taxus and I will be discussing the last battle from Season 3 of Rebels. On our Scoundrel Special Editions, we present a lighter version of a regular show to focus on discussing Star Wars content. With that, let's bring in the most interesting Sith in the galaxy. Taxus, how are you this evening?
Doing fine. I had a hangnail earlier, but took care of it, and now all systems are go.
Well, I hope you are recovering nicely. And let's get on with the discussion. And as always, with these discussions, we dive into the details of the episode, so consider this your spoiler warning. And here's our summary. Captain Rex leads Kanan, Ezra, Zeb, and Chopper on a salvage mission to Agamar. A Separatist battleship has crashed there, and they hope to retrieve proton bombs from it. However, the droid army on the battleship never deactivated at the conclusion of the Clone Wars. The droids are very much active and capture the crew of the Ghosts, minus Chopper.
The rebels are taken to a super tactical droid that explains he prevented the shutdown of the droids on the ship because he sensed a Republic trick. He then holds Zeb hostage and forces Rex, Kanan, and Ezra to engage in a war game to prove once and for all who is the better strategist. The rebels, the proxy for the Republic, will win if they can get to the bridge and rescue Rex.
Rex, Kanan, and Ezra manage to get to the bridge, but they realize they won the battle because the droids are old and malfunctioning. Meanwhile, Chopper sent a coded distress signal, which was intercepted by the Empire. Although they cannot decipher it, they know what it is because it repeats. Governor Price instructs that an Imperial force should be deployed to Agamar to investigate.
As the tactical droid and Rex argue who is superior, Ezra asks the question: if the Jedi were wiped out and the droids shut down, who won the war? Why did it end? Zeb responds that the Empire won as the Empire arrives. Ezra proposes an alliance to fight the Empire. The tactical droid reasons that he was programmed to fight the Republic, and the Republic became the Empire. Therefore, he can assist the rebels in fighting the Empire.
Using some of the bombs to open a path, the rebels manage to escape in a shuttle while the tactical droid escapes in another. Their alliance comes to an end. Although the rebels didn't recover the bombs, they have a new shuttle to replace the Phantom. And that is our summary of this episode. So there's several things to discuss about the last battle. And let's start with Rex. Okay. He's kind of experiencing some post-traumatic stress disorder in this episode, which is interesting because he didn't really exhibit that before this episode. When they found him at the beginning of season 2, he was kind of taking care of Gregor and Wolf, and they clearly were suffering some PTSD. Yeah. But Rex, not so much.
Yeah. The setting and the situation, of course, are going to bring it out of him. He's been doing the mistaken Kanan thing a few times in a few episodes, if I remember correctly. But especially when he realizes that he's been captured, or when he's waking up, that's when it really kicks in, because he even calls out for Cody instead of
exactly.
Which it's kind of sad, really, if you think about that. Funny moment when they were captured. Okay, and going back, I loved the Clone Wars elements that they implemented to this, of course, and that was the intent. And so just the little comedic timing pieces, like, where the battle droid says, let's go ahead and, I can't remember the exact term, but neutralize, or, it's going to involve shocking them, right? To submission. And Rex goes, no, wait, right at the last moment, and then zap, they're all knocked unconscious. I thought that was kind of humorous, but yeah, this is definitely a closure episode, I think. I think this is the way that the bone to throw to the Clone Wars fans, the ones that were like, save the Clone Wars, you know?
Yeah, I was a bit reminded of Michael O'Connor's one of his prequel entries at RetroZap when he was kind of equating the clones to the battle droids, in the sense that at one point Rex is getting carried away with this battle, and he dresses down Ezra for not executing part of their plan as it was timed. Right. And Kanan steps up and mentions, hey, take it easy on him. He's got to end this. And Ezra remarks, it's just like that old droid. And so, there's drawing a clear similarity between the clone and the droid. Now, where that's different from Michael Connor's post is that he was calling them both essentially machines, interchangeable machines that wouldn't have emotions. In this case, that droid has got a grudge. He did not believe that the Republic should have won that war. According to his calculations, their chances of doing so were infinitesimally small. They were severely outnumbered. I guess it was actually not infinitesimally; it was like 20% or something like that. Yeah. But he so he sensed a trick, and he always believed that if he had had an opportunity to execute his plans, then they would have won.
And how much insight is that? I mean, what if every other droid army had that thought, which is the thought, right? As far as being machines, I think this episode, and I kind of take umbrage with that because, maybe if we finally understood the way the human brain works, and by proxy the clone brain, we could understand that, hey, it's a series of zeros and ones, and that probabilities kick in. And even when we see when they're in the middle of their battle, the droid, he's kind of a profiler because he's using probability analysis to, figure out what his enemy's going to do next, right? I just don't think that Rex, though, is programmed, even though he used that word.
No, that's not the point I was trying to make. Yeah. In Michael's his article, he was looking at the clones and the droids purely in the lens of Attack of the Clones and how they were designed to be interchangeable parts in that movie. And he fully addresses that. You can't look at the Clone Wars when you're doing that analysis. But again, it was just this similarity being drawn by Ezra between Rex and the tactical droid that made me think of that in a different light, obviously, right, because they clearly have motivations in this case, and it's more than just program thinking.
But and that's the point, is that Rex, he's even arguing with the droid. He's even saying, when the droid's like, I've never taken a such a desperate strategy, and Rex is like, that's why we always won, which they get no little argument about. But Rex's point is that sometimes desperation overrides logic. Right. And that's the human element to the Clone Wars, you might say.
Yeah. Now we brought up Ezra. He has some interesting points that from this episode. First, I loved when they got captured in the ray shields by the battle droids. That's how they first came across them, and the droids were all surrounding them and talking. And one of the battle droids acknowledges a command with the very familiar "Roger, Roger," and I think Ezra turns to Zeb or Rex and says, "Who's Roger?" I love that. That was a nice touch.
That's a nice joke. It kind of sounds a little familiar, doesn't it?
Right. But then he gets but then when they've won the war game, when they've got up to the bridge, and Rex and the tactical droid are staring each other down, and Ezra redirects Rex's shot before he can shoot the tactical droid, and gets in the way and tells him, we didn't win. These droids are old, they're malfunctioning, and that's the only reason why we were able to get this far, because otherwise they would have been overwhelmed. And we saw it in the course of the episode. Those droids were beginning to overrun them, but the shields faltered on the droidicas, and they were able to get past them. And so that's when Ezra brings up this conversation about why did the Clone Wars end, and who really did win? He knew that the Jedi were wiped out, the battle droids were shut down, the clone army was decommissioned, but why? What was the ultimate end of this battle? And so The first time I saw this episode, that didn't. I was just kind of. It's just like, well, it was kind of a duh moment to me. I mean, this should have occurred to everybody in the galaxy.
But we're the fourth wall, so to speak, right?
Exactly. So. Yeah, but we're sitting from the comfort of our screens, and able to watch this and decipher and debate these points, and so being swept up in the moment. The whole galaxy's been through an entire war and things have been insecure, and then suddenly the Emperor the Chancellor at that point is able to bring the war to a close, declare that the General Grievous has been defeated and now the droid armories are being shut down, and to further the cause of security, they're going to transition from a republic to an empire. So I guess I could see how people might have been blinded to that. But I gotta tell you, my first reaction to that line was, well, no kidding. How come no one else has realized this up until now?
Well, and that's interesting because I've been thinking about this too, Dennis. And, sometimes I try to think. And I know that we've dropped. No, I don't think we've dropped. A lot of people are asking, where is the dark side element to Ezra that we saw in the beginning of this season? And I don't think that they're going to overtly be like, hey, Kanan says, hey, let's set all these people free. And Ezra says, well, let's just kill one of them as an example. What? Oh, nothing. You know what I mean? I don't think they're going to do that because they didn't do that in the Clone Wars either with Anakin. Every single Clone Wars episode didn't have this huge choice with Anakin saying, "Ooh, am I going to do this or do that?" It wasn't some huge moral step towards the dark side for him. But I wonder if this is something I've been thinking about. His walk and dalliance with the dark side might not have provided him some clarity to understand the ultimate enemy in the Clone Wars. This is something that I know in the Art of War is espoused. Understand your enemy to defeat your enemy. And something that's come up in Rebels, too. And so I wonder if that's not one of the reasons why he is the one that figured out the ultimate goal of the Clone Wars.
I suppose that's possible. I mean, I think it would be that Ezra is in the same position we are. He's the outsider on the position of the Clone Wars, where Kanan and Rex and these droids and many of the leaders of the rebellion and the Empire lived through it, or been swept up by it. He was living on Lothal and wasn't really around for the Clone Wars. I mean, he was basically born on Empire Day, and so he didn't grow up in that, and so he's got an outsider's perspective. So maybe his dalliance to the dark side had something to do with that. But returning to that point about Ezra and the dark side, the beginning of this season and really had him diving into that with the Sith holocron, and then his decision to kind of peer into those holocrons when they were trying to merge them and to gain insight on how to defeat the Sith and how to save his friends. And they've just kind of abandoned that line. Now, I understand your point that with Anakin in the Clone Wars, they didn't have those. It wasn't Anakin always being tugged at by the dark, etc.
Right.
But when Padme was threatened, his emotions always got the better of him. And that's exactly when he did turn to the dark side, when he basically became desperate in Revenge of the Sith. And so I'm wondering, if we aren't going to get how best to put this, is it going to take another situation where he thinks maybe it's hopeless for his friends? They're captured or they're trapped or something like that, that maybe he doesn't fall back on that again. And he just hasn't got there yet. Because, in this episode, when the war game started and they were beginning to get outnumbered by the battle droids, and especially with those droidicas up on the catwalk, he looked up and saw that there was that crane that he might be able to use the Force on and knock the droidicas off the bridge, which he did. So he didn't necessarily get that desperate. So maybe that's the key, that he's going to have to get desperate again before he tries to fall back on that.
And, okay, so I'm generally not like this, but in that element, or in that plot point. So, what does the Force have a limited range? You couldn't do it from where you're standing. You had to like get up close to it or something.
Well, I think he couldn't be standing in front of the droidicas. He'd get shot while he's trying to summon the Bridge of the Force. I think the idea was to go someplace where they
So it's a line of sight thing? I mean...
Maybe it is. Maybe he wasn't able to focus his thoughts clearly enough from behind that box under fire. I don't know. But,
I'm just throwing that out there. The one in general, I'm very like, well, I'm sure there's a reason for it, but that just kind of, that and one other element felt a little...
Well, how many times in the course of Star Wars have we seen the Jedi stand right in front of their enemies and then close their eyes and extend an arm out and use the Force? Kanan's big reveal as a Jedi at the beginning of season 1, he starts strolling towards stormtroopers, putting his lightsaber together, and then ignites it and points it at them. As opposed to from behind the safety of the crate he was hiding, behind, he could have put his lightsaber together and jumped out and took him by surprise.
Right. Instead, that was just awesome.
Okay. But so, it's a story element. But so then we get this battle, this war game. I think the war game concludes, and then the battle droid, under the direction of the tactical droid, and Rex and the rest of the rebels decide that they need to team up to defeat the Empire, who's shown up to see what's going on. And so the tactical droid, before he agrees to team up, he sends out a little squad of battle droids to confront the stormtroopers. And did you notice that while the stormtroopers get off their shuttle and they're walking up, and the one nudges the other and says, "Is that what I think it is?" Battle droid. And so they're just talking. In the meantime,
wasn't that Steven Stanton too doing one of the voices?
I know Steve Bloom was there. I didn't know if it was Stan or not. But as the battle droid walked up, saying, "Greetings, I've been sent by," and so he's trying to talk, and the stormtroopers are completely ignoring him, just carrying on by, "Is that what I think it is?" Yeah, I think that's all we got to do. And then the battle droid is like mumbling under his breath, like, "Hey, are they? I can't remember, but it's like they're not even listening."
I know. He's kind of like, wow, this is kind of rude. Because I know I've been in those situations where I've been in the middle of saying something and somebody just kind of comes in and interrupts what I'm saying, and everybody else just immediately turns and pays attention to them, and it's like, okay, I'll just push pause then and stand here uncomfortably looking at everyone. And that's what it felt like. Felt awkward. And I love it. I even loved when he tried to reboot it, when they decide, well, you know what we gotta do. Yep. And then the droid goes, greetings. And they start opening fire.
Yeah, and then the stormtroopers start shooting those battle droids, and then there's the one left. He's like, "Oh my god!" Literally, he says, "Oh my god!" Starts running, shooting the guns, and he gets an AT-AT dropped on him.
Which not only that was funny, but I thought it was. I do think it was funny that the droid was expressing a cry of disbelief to a deity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I thought that was kind of a funny element too.
Well, but did you, I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Have you ever seen the short Bambi versus Godzilla?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of. That battle droid's running around, all of a sudden,
you're right,
smashed by an AT-AT. But
that's so great.
If you haven't seen it, folks, you need to try look for Bambi versus Godzilla. I'm sure it's probably on YouTube.
It's like,
or something
what, a 1982 like Canadian short or something like that.
It's only like 2 minutes long, but it's
funny.
Kind of gruesome, but funny.
It's really funny.
So once so the meeting between the battle droids and the stormtrooper goes poorly, and the tactical droid is then convinced to team up with the rebels,
right? Because they ascertain the intent of the enemy.
Right. And so they decide that, okay, well, we can't really beat them. They've got a couple AT-ATs and a couple AT-DP, the walkers. Mm-hmm. And so they got to get out of there. And this is when Ezra says, well, we got those shuttles. And Kanan says, well, what shuttles? And Ezra's pointing out the shuttles I tried to tell you about earlier, but you cut me off. And that actually Chopper had found. And the tactical droid points out that these shuttles don't have weapons. So they decide they're going to try and flee past the Empire in these shuttles, but they got to create, they got to, break their line. And so to effectuate this, they're going to take some of the shells for the cannons, which they didn't. The cannons weren't working, so they couldn't use them. But they're going to roll the shells out to the walkers, and then cause them to explode. Now, they can't have the battle droids do it because they're not that accurate. So the battle droids are going to fire at the Jedi, who are then going to redirect their blaster bolts at the shells to cause them to explode. This seems needlessly complicated to me.
Okay. This is the other part, right? How come you couldn't have the Jedi just roll the shells out using the Force, the Force, and then turn around and redirect the fire? Or take the droids' blasters and shoot them themselves. That's true. As much as I like this episode, this part of it seemed needlessly complicated. But I think the intent was to show that the droids and the elements of the Republic were able to work together and form a strategy.
Right. They went to pains to point out how this was going to take a big act of trust.
And to you and I, who obviously are brilliant, we understand all this. But maybe to some elements of the audience who, obviously the younger audience might not understand.
Hey, my 9-year-old and 12-year-old are like, what are they doing?
Well, they're your kid.
Okay,
kids,
thanks.
right?
I appreciate the compliment, but it's
some are slower than others, Dennis.
This reminded me of a video game where it's you kind of you have a problem and you just want to charge right towards it and take care of it, but instead you have to set up some sort of complicated mousetrap in effect in order to take care of the situation. So I don't know, it very much reminded me of the old Star Wars Galaxy days where you had to do a sequence of events so that you could effectuate something to destroy your enemy, and that's what and they're doing. So I don't know, I mean, I'm not going to smash this episode over that, but I, like you pointed out, why did it take them having to roll those out with the droids? I'm not sure why the Jedi couldn't have pushed them out there with the Force, even maybe flung them out there with the Force,
or even use the Force to make them explode.
That one I'm a bit more dubious on, but at least I don't know, why did they have to? Oh, anyway, moving past that.
Good point.
So the plan works. They get the shells out there at the foot of one of the walkers. The droids fire at the Jedi. They redirect it with their lightsabers, and the shell explodes. And the next thing they've got one of those walkers going down, and they take off in their shuttles.
Could I interrupt you 1 second with that?
Go ahead.
One of the cool elements that I loved was how the animators gave a sense of expression to the walkers, because as that one walker's going down, what are the other walkers doing? They're turning and looking at it like, what the? You know what I mean?
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Every single one. Even the chicken walker and the AT-ATs, their heads are turned like, what? You know what I mean?
Well, I didn't notice that expression. What I did know is that I was incredibly impressed with when the droids came out to fire upon the walkers, and as you so eloquently put it, the chicken walkers. When the
destroyers
on the walkers was really quite impressive. The AT-AT or whatever that is, it reacted a bit. It took the earlier blows quite well, but the ATDP, the smaller walker, when the Droidekas opened fire on it, you were seeing some real damage.
It was knocking them back. Yeah, right. Yeah. They were doing some damage. I thought that was pretty cool too. It's like, boy, these destroyers are still something to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm. And so, returning to the earlier point, so the shuttles are making their run for it, and the AT-AT hits the first one, which is just carrying battle droids, and they kind of glance off the cockpit and crash. And then the next two shuttles, one of which is carrying the rebels, and the other one is carrying the tactical droid and some more battle droids. They get clear.
Yeah.
So in space, they say their goodbyes. The tactical droid is concluded that there's a less than 1% chance that the rebellion will be successful. So he can't join them for that reason.
Yeah.
And then Hera and Sabine, who apparently had stolen some fuel from the Empire earlier in the episode, make their way back to Agamar and notice that there's two shuttles leaving, and then they hail Kanan, who says, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the proton bombs, but we've got a replacement for the Phantom.
Right.
So this is going to be the new Phantom. So what do you think? What do you think about that?
Okay, I thought that was pretty cool about the whole Phantom replacement thing. That was a nice element to work into it. And it's kind of a way to bring in a little everlasting piece of the Clone Wars into the ongoing story. Hera and Sabine. Okay, so their role seems very, very... It's sort of like Zeb. Zeb went along and ride for the Planet Group, and I was like, oh, cool. But really all he was there for was just the plot element of having the necessity of waging the war game. And, having some funny exchanges with the droids, especially when droids says, sorry, after they become allies. I thought that was pretty funny. But then Hera and Sabine, their role seems very, very diminished in this episode, but what they are doing when they steal the fuel, that was important to develop the plot and to have the Empire actually engage the droids and the rebels. So I thought that
yeah, I agree with you. I think it was by necessity that Hera and Sabine were in this episode, because the tactical droid makes a point earlier in the episode of saying that he asks Kanan, is this your Padawan? To which Kanan responded, most of the time. I love that line. That was great. But then the tactical droid points out that then we have the usual setup, which was a Jedi, a Padawan, and a clone. And so that, and they're going to be outnumbered by the somewhat limited number of battle droids that he has. It doesn't have, at this point, no longer has his full complement of droids. So I'm with you on that. It was good to see that, it's not that Sabine and Hera were just sitting there, twiddling their thumbs, waiting for them to come back. They went and ran their own mission. And hopefully that story will get sold someplace else. Because when we see them next, after they drop off Kanan, Ezra, Rex, and company, is they're being pursued by Star Destroyers and TIE fighters.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, and they've stolen, and Sabine remarks that they've stolen enough fuel for the fleet. So I guess that doesn't actually take up a whole lot of room, because that would seem like a lot of fuel. But that was a good story. That was a good part of it. But then this notion that Rex gives this little some accolades to Ezra, that he did what a galaxy full of senators and Jedi and the clones and droids and separatists could not do, which was cut through to what the heart of the issue was and end the Clone Wars. Again, I'm still thinking about that because it just seems obvious, and they're acting like that. I understand why to them the Clone Wars was not over, but it was over. The Clone Wars was done. No one was still fighting the Clone Wars other than this isolated incident.
Technically, the Republic won.
Right. Except for it didn't.
Right.
It died. It became the Empire.
Right.
Nobody won. But that was right. The Empire won. They emerged from the ashes of both the Republic and the Separatists.
Well, much like Anakin laments in Attack of the Clones, one person should be the one that was calling the shots. And we see one person's the one that figures it out. So
and everything is so rosy.
Yay, dark side. And
so,
clarity
what do you think they're going to do with this shuttle that's going to be the new Phantom? It doesn't have weapons, so I'm assuming they're going to equip it, because they did rely on the old Phantom for some firepower.
And mount a couple of tri-blasters on that sucker and fore and aft, and you can go town.
I suppose. I didn't think the Ghost was big enough to house this thing, but I suppose it is. Because Kane starts to act like it's not an issue.
They'll probably have to modify it some, so I imagine we're going to see it changed up a bit. I imagine we'll see like the dorsal fin element and not so much the fold out wings like we did with Phantom. But they're going to have to add some weapons to this sucker.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what Sabine does with the paint job.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
All right. Well, do you have any final thoughts for this episode?
Okay. Something I really thought was kind of funny and sort of a anti-droidist kind of element. When Ezra's getting closer so he can do line of sight force usage, he turns around a corner and who's waiting for him is Chopper. And Ezra is almost like, it's just you, because he's in the middle of fighting all these droids, right? And so I thought that was a pretty good comedic element. All in all, I thought this episode had a good amount of action. Love the nostalgia element with going back to the Clone Wars, even though it's not really that long ago. I thought that good amount of comedy, good back and forth with everybody. But, given what I think are a couple of little plot holes, especially using the Force. I'm going to give it a B+ on this. You know, I know we don't really like to grade too much, but
well, we've done it for every episode so far.
How about this? I'll give it an 89.5.
Well done. You know, this is an episode that I've liked better with each viewing, and I saw it for the third time today, mainly so I could get images from it. But it grew on me. I think if you'd asked me last Saturday when this originally aired, I would have given it a B-. But right now, I think I'm back up to a B+ on this episode. I liked it quite a bit. I think it just I do like I like the Clone Wars elements to it, and which reminds me, the closing Rebels logo done in the style Clone Wars was a very nice touch.
That was cool.
I know Dave Filoni had hinted at that prior to the episode's release. I'm still wrapping my mind around this whole Ezra being the one that's identified why there's no closure to the Clone Wars thing, which at this point, so many years afterwards, I would have thought had been obvious. But
sometimes you're too close to the Force to see the trees, you know?
Yeah. Well, if I was giving a percentage, I think I'd give it a point or two lower than you did, but still a B+.
Okay.
Well, that's our discussion on Rebels. I know you have an addendum to skystalking.
Yes, I do. So coming up this next month is Rhode Island Comic-Con. And I think it's fairly early, but yeah, so I think it's like the first weekend of not October. Ooh, what year? November or so, if I remember correctly. Do you remember?
November 11th to 13th at the Rhode Island Convention Center and Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Dunkin' Donuts Center. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're like the East Coast Southern made for us. So we need to have some donut wars one day. But anyway.
I'll take Krispy Kreme.
Okay, all right. That's a hot space opinion about some Krispy Kreme there. Okay, but I digress. One day we will have the donut wars. But appearing at the Rhode Island Comic-Con is going to be John Ratzenberger. Okay, he was in Empire Strikes Back, and I remember he gave our friend of the show, Monty Pittman, and I some really good life advice at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim, and we were so geeked out that we don't remember to this day what it was, and it probably would have changed both of our lives. So, yeah. Anyway, next up we've got Ray Hassett, who is also in The Empire Strikes Back, and rounding this off is a big, can anybody guess who? Oh, maybe not, so I'll just lay it out. Billy D. Williams. Whoa! Yeah, Billy D. So get out there. If you're in the, East Coast, Northern East Coast area, and maybe Massachusetts or something, which, are there people in RetroZap that live around there, Dennis?
I don't know necessarily if they live around there, but there is a RetroZap contingency. I believe Joe, Chris, Bill, and others are all making their way down to that. So Joe, Chris from Brews and Blasters, and Dan. Bill from Trade Federation. I think Dan may be included in that as well.
Yeah, so we've got 3 RetroZap shows that are going to be representing there. I don't know if they're going to be wearing RetroZap t-shirts, but I do know that Joe said that everybody that comes up and says that they love Starships, Sabers, and Scoundrels, he will give $5 to. So everybody find him and ask for that. Okay?
Sorry, Joe.
I'm not.
Yeah, whatever. All right. Well, we had to give that addendum because those the announcements of Ratzenberger and Billy D. Williams were made after we record Skystalking for our last episode. So this is why we say make sure you're always checking the websites for these conventions as you get closer to time to see who is and who's not going to be there. All right. Well, that I think does it for the Scoundrel Special Edition. Before we go, please check us out across our social media platforms. I can be found at DJKVER2 on Twitter. Taxus is at Darth Taxus, and the show is at SCubedPod. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/SCubedPod. And we know they're a pain, but an iTunes review would be immensely helpful. Mm-hmm. As always, we welcome any emails. We'd love to hear what you thought about this episode, Rebels. If you've had any great Halloween Star Wars adventures, I've been seeing an awful lot of pictures of people in their Star Wars costumes, so that would be awesome. Hey, did you maybe make a jack-o'-lantern that had something to do with Star Wars? Let us know.
Yeah.
But anyways, that email address is at SCubedPod@RetroZap.com. RetroZap.com. And we are also, of course, part of the RetroZap.com podcast network, and you know all the great shows over there. So please check them out, and you can find them all, of course, at RetroZap.com. So any final thoughts, Taxus?
Well, just I hope everybody doesn't have too bad of a tummy ache or a toothache from all the candy they ingested. And we'll look forward to seeing you in November for our next show.
All right, start getting ready for Thanksgiving, everyone. And with that, may the Force be with you.